Jennifer, welcome to the show. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
So, for those who are not too familiar with you, give everybody just a brief background about, you know, who you are and how you got to this point.
Ooh, brief.
All right, not so brief.
Yeah, no, I'm joking. So I'm Jennifer Butler. I am online though as Jen Joy Coaching. And, I would say how I got to this point. I think I always wanted to impact the world, right? Like I was like this idealistic young person who thought like I could just change the world and make it a better place.
Right.
And over the years, I think I realized how difficult that was. And it wasn't this like actionable thing that I was going to be able to do. But what I learned was that as I went through my own struggles and challenges and faced my own hardships, I eventually learned that what I could do was take my own experiences and blend them with this heart I have of wanting to impact people and my education, and use all of that to kind of impact the world on a level where I'm interacting with women and helping them to do the same, to really learn how to take their greatest pain, what might be their greatest pain, because I work with women going through divorce and heartbreak, and really make it this moment where they're able to turn that into the moment that they begin to live their best life. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's how I started doing what I'm doing. And what I do is I coach women, like I said, going through divorce and our heartbreak, using a method called conscious uncoupling, which is a method created by Catherine Woodward Thomas. And I combine that with a bunch of my own other training that I've received over the years. And so coaching with me is very intuitive, very action oriented, and very deeply rooted in the body. It's a pretty awesome experience, if I do say so myself.
Now, I've heard a lot about conscious uncoupling. It's been in the news, more frequently in the last, I'd say, couple years than ever before. I think it's a newer concept overall, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think it got popular. Gwyneth Paltrow,
right?
When she divorced, I think that's when it kind of like got popular.
Right, and a lot of people thought, like she invented it, but no.
Yeah, no, it's
right.
Catherine Woodward Thomas,
Right.
and she's brilliant.
So talk to us a little bit about conscious uncoupling. Like, let's just start. What is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so first and foremost, conscious uncoupling, I think a lot of people hear it. And I think maybe too, because, Gwyneth Paltrow did it with her ex-husband. They did it together. So I think a lot of times people hear it and they think they're supposed to do it as a couple. And it's actually created to do on your own. It's individual work. And it's beautiful when both people want to do it, right? But it's still individual work. So conscious uncoupling really is a step-by-step method of going through the divorce process, or even the emotional piece of the divorce, or even later on, for women who maybe have gotten divorced 3 years ago, but they still feel stuck. But it's a way to go through the emotional healing and grief in a way that allows you to really let go of the past, take ownership of, I like to call it radical responsibility, right? Like take radical responsibility of who you are, who you've been being, and how you can begin creating the future that really kind of sets you on fire, right? It's like if you can heal your past and let go of your past, then you're free to move forward in a way that aligns with your deeper truth. And conscious uncoupling is created to allow you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that because I always tell people, and it's hard when you're going through the trauma, let's say of a divorce, and you're in the mud, so to speak. So many emotions that you're going through and you're dealing with. but I always try to tell people, look, at some point your divorce is going to end, and you have your whole post-divorce life to look for and look after and consider. What do you want for that? It's like
Mm.
a fresh start, and try to funnel their energy toward that, and into some more positivity.
Yeah, I love that. One of the questions I love to ask my clients is, who do you want to be on the
Right.
other side of this? Because there is you do get to the other side
Eventually.
eventually. You do. So who do you want to be over there? Because the choice is really up to you. It's all in your power. But I don't know that everyone realizes that and understands that everything they need and everything they want is really inside of them. They just need to learn how to access that.
Yeah, and that's the trick, right? I guess that's the secret sauce, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, it is.
um,
That is the secret sauce.
but so let's talk a little bit about it. I mean, how do you help somebody? Well, usually, let me ask you this: at what point do you typically engage people? Let's talk about somebody going through a divorce. Where are they most commonly in the process when you start working with them?
It's really funny. They're everywhere and anywhere. So
Yeah.
I work with women who are all the way at the beginning where they're contemplating, they're just not happy and they're considering divorce, but they're not sure. All the way through to women who, like I said, maybe the divorce happened 5 years ago and they still feel stuck. They still feel this emotional tie to the relationship that they can't seem to get past. So anywhere in that spectrum is women who I work with.
I had a
It's
feeling
in,
you were going to say that.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
the same way.
yeah, because it's, the work at the end of the day, no matter where you are in the process, really is about yourself, right? And I like to think of it as like learning how to love yourself
Yeah.
and learning how to embody the freedom that you have to exist in this world in your deepest truth. And you do all of that by taking this radical responsibility for your life. And when you hit those three components and you really start to live into that, then you start to like create and attract the life, the love, the relationships, like everything that's aligned with your truth, with what makes you happy.
Yeah, that is so true. So let's talk about that, because I just love saying radical responsibility.
I know, me too.
It just rolls off the tongue.
I know.
But like, help me. Maybe you can give me, of course, without giving any identifiable information. But like, can you walk us through an example of working with somebody and helping them through that step?
Mm,
If somebody's stuck, I could think of maybe two scenarios off the top of my head. One, somebody, like you mentioned before, is kind of just stuck in the past, doesn't know how to move forward, let go. And then how do they work through that? And, how does radical responsibility kind of look like for that type of person versus somebody, I don't know if you've worked with somebody who is just angry, bitter,
mm-hmm.
and they're stuck in that way, feeling, that all they want to do is blame, 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 and maybe aren't taking any ownership of their role in the whole relationship, in the marriage. How does radical responsibility, how do you work through that with that type of a person?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really the same, to be honest. Catherine calls it self as source, right? So how are we the source of everything that's happening in our life? So when I work with clients, the only way that I can really work with my clients and coach them is if they are able to stand in the perspective of, I am the source of my reality. I am the source of my relationships. I am the source of whatever's in front of me, right? As if I had a pen and I was the author of my life and I'm narrating the story, because
Yes.
then that gives me all of the power, right? And when I can stand in that place, I can look and say, okay, so this is how I co-created this. This is how I co-created that. This is how I'm continuing to feed the anger, the resentment. Oh, this is how I'm still stuck 5 years later. This is how I'm still connected here. And once you can stand in that perspective and own all of that stuff, well, then it's all in your power to shift it.
Yeah, wow.
It's
Yeah.
freedom, right? Because
Yeah.
that's
No,
freedom.
you brought up a few things there that I'm just so happy you did, because it just reemphasizes that everything that I've been kind of putting out there. I spoke with another coach on my podcast who used the words that you just did,
Mhm.
which I love. It's about you being the author of your life,
Mm,
right? And I think she framed it. You could either be the author of your life, or I think she called it the weatherman. And just kind of watching everything go by and happen to you.
yeah,
And
exactly.
which one would you rather be, right? You want to be the author. You want to write your story, and only you can write your own story. You have control. And if you don't take the pen, then your story is going to be written for you.
Yeah.
And right. I love that whole like theme of, taking charge. Maybe things didn't go your way before. And but that doesn't mean it has to be that way going forward, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of the reasons that we get stuck, right, or that we enter into relationships that don't actually feel good, or, feel all of that sort of feeling stuck and blocked, it usually traces back to these limiting beliefs, which really start when we're kids, right? These kind of false narratives that we come up with as children as we're trying to understand the world and things that are happening to us. And then suddenly we buy into that as a way to survive. And then we start living from that story. And so those limiting beliefs, we can kind of, what I like to think of is like you can kind of follow those back and see where that started and when the story became, I'm not good enough, or I'm alone, or whatever your story is. And then really start to see, well, how have I been showing up in that story, right? Because if I believe that, I'm alone, well, then I'm probably not going to ask for help, right? Because I'm going to expect that there's nobody there for me,
Mhm.
right? I'm probably not going to be really excited about engaging in conflict because I expect that people are going to just leave, right? Leave me alone, right? So you start showing up in a way that then creates these relationships and narrates these characters into your life. And so yeah, it's like, of course when you said like, of course I want to be the narrator of my story, right? Like I want to write my story. I think yes. And I think it is a scary step to take sometimes because you really do have to take a very honest and vulnerable look at yourself. You have to stand in some really hard like memories, right? You have to own, like, I know for me, when I started doing this work, there were a lot of people that I hurt in my life. And I had to own that. I had to own that yes, I was doing the best I could at the time and showing up in my story, but that doesn't change the fact that I hurt people I loved. And so there has to be a lot of ability to just uh, be truthful with yourself, but not in a way where you're feeling blame or shame or beating yourself up.
Right.
Because that there is like when you can heal and forgive yourself, then the ability to heal and forgive others opens up, even if it's like this awful ex who has like destroyed your life, right? Like even then you are able to open and forgive and love because it's really not about them anyway. At the end of the day, it's about you.
Absolutely. And it's I kind of summarize it in my own head like this. Tell me if you agree. You know, the past is the past. We can't change it. But it's a matter of identifying, our role in what happened in the past and why it happened the way it did. Um, so we are aware of our behavior so we don't repeat that behavior in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And because, what's that phrase? If you don't learn from your past mistakes, you're bound to repeat them, something
Yep,
like that. Uh,
exactly.
and so, right, that goes, I mean, I think that applies to relationships and almost everything in life. That if your relationship in the past or relationships, didn't work out, or you had the same type of issues, that until you acknowledge what happened, acknowledge your role in what happened. Not to say that you're to blame, but there's always some role we all play,
Mm-hmm.
and to adding to a dynamic. And if you're not aware of that and take steps to maybe change that in the future, then you're bound to repeat it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's the other saying, right? Like everything repeats until you've learned the lesson, right? And those it gets the messages and the call for you to kind of outgrow it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And so I always tell my clients, you want to do this work so that you never have to live through this again. Like,
Right.
do you ever want to have to go through this again? No? Then let's do this so that
Right.
you can create something completely different in the future.
But you got to get through the mud first.
You do. You
Yeah.
do. And there's nothing beautiful ever comes from like ease, right? There's always, like with birth, with anything, there's always friction and discomfort. And there's this part of anything beautiful. You have to come through the dark. And everyone can. Like that's the thing. It's like I know and I believe with all my heart and soul that it's possible for every single person to do this and to
Yep.
truly live this life where this pain of divorce or heartbreak that really is just so gut-wrenching can really be something that you look back on with gratitude and you're like, oh my God, like that's the moment I became who I was made to be.
No, no, absolutely. I mean, how many times have you spoken to somebody who's in a good spot in life, emotionally and every other way, and they could tell you a time when it was not so happy and bright, and they're like, "Right, I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have that experience."
Yeah,
And that I
exactly.
think that applies to everybody and all of us, but we don't know that until we get to the other side and get to that
Hmm.
happier time, right? So I mean, I get it. It's a hard sell when you're going through it, but you got to buy in. I think you said that, right? You got to buy in and work through the process and trust that it'll work.
Yeah, there's almost like this, it is in a sense a leap of faith, but yeah, it's like this moment where you're like, I'm gonna take the reins here, right? Like I'm not gonna let this just happen to me. I'm going to go through this in an intentional way so that I have some, intentionality, thoughtfulness, like just uh, creativity in what my life is becoming through this, right? It's like I hate the phrase like everything happens for a reason,
Oh, me too. I know.
but everything does happen for whatever reason you make it. So you get to make it whatever reason
Right.
you choose.
I like that. Because it's like the difference of being playing the victim all the time
Right.
and taking charge of your life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I
So,
think we all need to stop expecting life to be like roses the whole way through, right? Like it's interesting, like everyone in life goes through difficulties,
yeah.
everybody, and yet we're still so shocked and like victimized when it happens to us. And it's just a part of life. And if we can just start to accept that, I think, and really start to believe that, okay, even though this might be painful, it is happening for me on my journey through this life. If I decide to embrace it in a way that I can learn and grow and transform, then it's really happening for me to become bigger and better and more of what I need to be so that I can be whatever it is that I'm here to do. I'm here for a reason. Um, and I think that's unique to each of us. And we go through our struggles on our journeys to get us to that magical place that we're meant to be.
It's a roller coaster ride,
I
you know.
know.
But
Right. So you might as well have fun with
no,
it.
that's no, seriously, it's like what do I want to say? I just had it on the tip of my tongue. It's killing me. But right, you got to learn. Life is ups and downs, and that's
Hmm.
how I describe divorce. It's a roller coaster. Strap yourself in. You're gonna have your ups and your downs, um, but it's a ride, and you can either enjoy the ride. A lot of people are always focused on the result or the end of the ride. What's it going to be? But a lot of it is the ride itself, right? And that's how
Yeah.
I approach life. Like it's the journey. And if you don't learn to appreciate and roll through the process and the journey, then you're shorting yourself, really.
Yeah. And especially with divorce, you know, when you're going through the process, you're making decisions, and acting in ways that you might not really want to be if you're not kind of in the process, right? If you're kind of thinking about the end and getting what you need to get, and right, like you're not really um, allowing yourself to experience it in a way that you can I don't want to say better yourself, but grow from and expand from.
Right.
Like, I'm just, because I didn't have this work when I went through my divorce 10 years ago. I hadn't found this, it wasn't even around.
Yeah, I was about to say I don't think it existed.
No, it didn't. And I spent the first, at least probably 2 or 3 years, thinking I was doing everything that I could do, but really being reactive and um, making decisions from a place of hurt and pain, and just not being in a place where this work allows you to be, which is, how am I relating to this? How can I respond instead of react? How can I get to the other side of this with my head held high, feeling really good about maybe not the experience, but how I related to it, how I showed up? Because at the end of it all, I mean, I know for me, the things that I look back on and feel sad about are some of the moments when I kind of showed up out of integrity with myself and was just kind of like mean. And that's not me. So I think that's the important piece, right? It's like you can get through the hardest things in life with integrity and honor and feeling good at the other side about who you were being.
And yeah, I think that's what's most important is that you are comfortable with who you are and happy with who you are and at peace with, you know, the decisions that you've made and you will make in the future, really.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
I feel like, I mean, this has been a great talk, and we're almost out of time, but have we been talking about unconscious coupling as part of all this? Like, I feel like almost we haven't been, but then I do feel like we have, and it's all kind of wrapped into the whole concept.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of this is part of conscious uncoupling, and um, it all comes through when you go through the process. And it's really the reason, everything we've been talking about is the reasons that, Catherine created it and
Right.
teaches it, and why I love the work so much that, I mean, I feel honored to get to bring it to my clients.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Could you, and I'm going to put you on the spot, but is there like some two or three good tips that you can give people to like get them started on the path to conscious uncoupling? Like, what can they do now uh, to to start helping improve themselves?
Yeah, I would say set an intention for who you want to be on the other side of all of this, right? Who Really think about it, like really feel into it. Who do you want to be? And set that intention. That intention should feel a little scary, right? It should
Right.
feel a little bit outside your realm of possibility, but something that you really desire. But you know, that magic place where it's like, well, I really want it, but I'm scared to say it, right? It
Outside your
should be
comfort
set in
zone.
the yeah, just a little bit. You want to give yourself somewhere to go. So that intention should feel like that, but it should be stated in the positive. It should be about the future, and it should be bold, right? And so set that intention for yourself, and then start to look at how you're being, who you're being, right? And look at the difference between who you're being now versus who you would need to be the person living into that intention. And see if you can start to see the difference, right? It's like if in my intention I want to be this really empowered person who is led by her deepest truth and honors herself and those around her, then I want to start to think, okay, well, how does that woman act? How does she look? What does she wear? What types of things does she say? And how does she show up in the world with herself, with others, and in life? Right. And get really clear about that and see where you can start making shifts and start where you can start seeing where you can grow into the woman in that intention.
Yeah, and I love that tip, and that's so accessible for everybody listening. Really, try to do it. I almost equate it to like pretend you're writing a movie script or a TV, script for a show, and you're creating a character. You know,
Mm.
who do you want that character to be, and get down into the detail. What color hair do they have? What color eyes? What do they wear? The clothes. Where do they live? What kind of car do they drive? All like everything. And like then when that'll help you crystallize your vision.
Yeah, and it's more than even crystallizing. It's like, okay, well, that woman, I'm guessing, sounds like she's really good at stating the things that she needs and how she feels. Sounds like she's probably really good at setting boundaries. Sounds like she is a really good communicator, right? And I'm just guessing that stuff, but that's the important pieces that you want to get clear on, because then you want to look at yourself. And if you're like, wow, I don't even know what boundaries are,
Right.
right? Then it's like, okay, that's actionable work you can do right now. You can say, all right, I need to learn what boundaries are, and I need to learn how to start creating them. Or, gosh, I never tell anyone what I need, right? Then you can start learning, well, how do I start to communicate my needs? So you can use that person and the way they show up and how they um, relate to others in life and themselves, and then start using that as the sort of North Star guiding you as to what you need to learn and start growing into.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that tip. I think that's a
Yeah,
great one.
absolutely.
And then when they're done with that exercise, they can call you.
Exactly. And then call me.
so so that's a great transition, Jason, into how Jennifer, how do people find you?
Yeah. So the best way to find me is my website. It's jenjoycoaching.com, and it's JENN joycoaching.com. It's the same on Instagram. But what's really awesome on my website, there are some free resources, including a free 4-day mini course. So they can kind of start to poke around and start learning right away. And I am also going to be opening a membership site August 24th. It will be opening for registration. So I'm super excited to just embrace all these women and guide them through this so that they can just start living a life that they're like super excited about.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Do you work with men too? What if men were interested?
I don't. I only work with women, but I
Ah, all
have
right.
some amazing coaches that I am connected to who work with men. So I always just
I knew you were
refer
going to
them
say
out.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that is awesome. And if you're listening and you're in the car or something, like, don't pull over. I'll put all these links and everything in the show notes, so you could always find them. And that's the show notes on the website, my website, not iTunes or anything like that. Um, Jennifer, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. I had a great talk, and I'm have to have you on again because I know there's a lot more we can cover
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love that. Thanks for having me.
anytime.